Welcome, my friends, to the Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. I recently had the pleasure of joining Patricia Steere on her Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes show. The conversation with Patricia was wide-ranging and a lot of fun. Please take a moment to visit and subscribe to Patricia's channel. The link can be found in the show notes below. And so, without further ado, here's my conversation with Miss Steere.
Hello and welcome to Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. This is episode 160 and I'm Patricia Steere. My guest is Mike Williams. He's the host of the Sage of Quay Radio Hour here on YouTube, and he has a blog called The Sage of Quay. All of this is in the description box of this video. Mike is an independent musician, writer, singer, songwriter, recording artist, and a hypnotherapist. He's interviewed some of the most interesting people around on a wide variety of subjects. You may know such names as Jordan Maxwell, DITRH, Ole Demigard, Santos Bonacci, Sophia Smallstorm, and even Eric Dubay. So let's find out about what got him into Flat Earth, what woke him up, and we'll talk about a variety of subjects from alternative news and research to conspiracy, holistic healing, spirituality, and more. Mike Williams, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you, Patricia, for having me join you on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, you're the one who's always interviewing other people. And yeah. I think it's high time that we got to know a lot more about you. So I'm very pleased that you allowed me this opportunity.
Oh, anytime. It is interesting to be a guest versus being on the other side of the microphone. You know, you get to ask all the questions, and then, you know, when you switch it around.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You're in the hot seat.
I've been on your show before, and
yes.
When you're a guest on someone else's show and you're used to doing a show, you almost feel like you've got to ask questions. So you end up interviewing the interviewer. So
yes,
we might just start interviewing each other right here. You never know. We have a live chat, and at some point in the show, I'll go in and say hello to everybody. But I do appreciate all who are here. And if you're watching, please subscribe to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, Mike Williams channel. And like I said, it's in the description box. While you're there, subscribe to this channel too for more great content, and give the video a thumbs up. All right, now that I got that part out of the way, what woke you up? I don't mean just to Flat Earth. I mean, jarred you out of the matrix and got you to slowly open your eyes to, you know, where you are today.
I was actually, I would say, a late bloomer. Around the 2005-2006 timeframe is when I started to awaken. So we'll talk, you know, about 10, 12 years ago. And the first issue that I looked into was 9/11, like most people. And initially, when 9/11 happened, I was on board with the government story, their fairy tale of the events. And then slowly what happened was I started looking into other research. And by the time I hit 2006, I was pretty convinced that the story that we were told about 9/11, you know, that didn't happen, and that something else took place. So that was really the beginning. And then from there, as you know, Patricia, what happens is once you start digging into one rabbit hole and you start doing your research, other issues and other conspiracies start to present themselves, because at the end of the day, it's not really silos. They're all interconnected one way or another. Even those that don't seem very connected, if you do enough research, you'll find that there is a foundation for what goes on in the world, for the deception. So one thing led to another. I started looking into the JFK assassination, you know, the Apollo moon landings, and so on. And about 2 years ago, when the Flat Earth really hit YouTube, when it first presented itself, I ignored it. And I just thought it was crazy, and I paid no attention to it. But there was this little voice that kept saying, Mike, just take a look at some of those videos. And specifically, it was Mark's little segments. I forgot what he called them, but
Flat Earth Clues.
Flat Earth Clues. There you go.
That's what did it for me as well.
Yeah. And it was very interesting because I watched the first one and like, well, that was interesting, you know, and then I went to the second one, the third one, and so on. I think he probably did around 11 or 12 of them. I don't remember. So it got my interest sparked, and I didn't agree with everything, especially at the time, but I felt that there was enough there to look into it. So, and that's what I did. I started looking into it. And of course, then you start seeking out more and more material, and you start looking at, like, I looked at, I liked Eric's work. I had Eric on the show twice. I read his book, Flat Earth Conspiracy, which is a great book in my view. There's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of information that if anybody wants to learn more about the flat Earth, they should look at that book, read it. And I had, of course, yourself on the show, David Weiss on the show a couple of times. Jaren's been on the show. Amir from Insanity is Sanity has been on the show. So I just brought together all these folks, and not repeatedly. I would have other folks on to talk about other topics, but I would periodically just spread it out and bring the flat Earth folks on. And slowly but surely, all of the pieces of the puzzle, at least from my perspective, started to come into place. And the geocentric model started to make a lot more sense than the heliocentric model. And what I discovered was that through my journey of learning about flat Earth is that I didn't really know much about the heliocentric model. I thought I did. But, when I started getting into all of the details that many of the good folks out there that are doing the flat Earth research and the presenting, and there's a lot of very smart people doing this work, I was amazed at what I didn't know. And once you get into it, and once you compare it to the heliocentric explanation of how things work, the heliocentric model doesn't really stand up, again, in my opinion. So that's how I landed there. And today, I just flat out tell folks that I'm a flat earther, and I really don't care about what people think, what they say, or some of the nasty comments that come our way. I got past all of that stuff. There was a period when I was going through it, and I remember saying to myself, "Oh, you know what? I think I am a flat earther," but I still was standoffish as far as putting myself out there. And then I reached a certain point where I got over that hurdle, and I just freely talk about it these days. And like I said, I really don't concern myself with what the heliocentrists and the folks that love the globe, what they want to throw my way. My attitude is, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm not going to throw rocks at you. So if you believe that you live on a globe and you believe the heliocentric model, then fine. So be it. That's what your belief system is. It's not mine. So we'll live and let live is really how, I approach it.
A lot of the things you said resonate with the way I feel and the way many who are in our live audience, I was just checking the chat, feel too. Some of us woke up long before. I was unable to see that 9/11 was what it really was. Well, we don't know what it really was, but I thought it was as the government told us. So it took me a while to wake up. And then, of course, it all unfolded for many people that are in this chat too. But yes, like I said, some people knew right away and they were already keen to this. I've even met some people who've been flat earthers for a very long time, long before the 2015 dawn of the new flat earther, when people like Eric came out, and Mark Sargent and Math Powerland, and then Jarenism and all the rest. So I was not among that group. I was, March 2015. And it all fell into place like puzzle pieces, and we're all still learning and growing. But I think one of the things when I first watched the clues, and I'm going back to you when I'm talking about me, is that I didn't really agree with all the things Mark said at first. And I still don't agree with Mark's complete viewpoint. There's probably nobody's viewpoint about where we live that is completely my viewpoint. I think it's all somewhat personal, although there are actual facts that I deal with, like water being flat and no measurable curvature, and we've never been to space, and NASA lies. That's kind of where I come from. But I was not an atheist, but kind of close. And Mark was talking about basically that they're hiding God. He didn't use those words really specifically, but you knew he was talking about a creator. And I thought, whoa, what is this? Spirituality, regardless of what religion, what belief system you grew up with. I think that that's missing in many of our lives. And that's why this, when we heard about it, put the light bulb on in our head and made us think, I always knew there was more to life than we've been told. Did that happen with you?
Absolutely. I'm a very spiritual person, and the flat earth, once I got more into it, yes, you do have the revelation that, okay, so people always ask, well, why would they hide it? Well, when you take a look at mainstream science today, it's a science, it's really a religion. And it's a big piece of it is based on being an atheist. It's atheism, a belief in no God. And that's a religion. Atheists like to believe they don't have a religion, but it is a religion. It's a religion of no belief in God. And so what the flat earth does, in my view, is it makes it obvious to many people that, well, if it's a flat plane and if there is a firmament, and they've been lying about it for 500 years or so, well, why would they do that? And I do believe a big piece of it is because they don't want people to think in terms of a creator. Because in the Matrix, your God, they're the controllers. They're your government, as an example, right? The first layer is the government. Your God is the government. And then above the government, of course, are puppet masters, and they're the true gods, if you will. So it's all about obedience. And if they have people thinking in terms of no God, or being agnostic or an atheist, or basically, neutral at best, then what happens is they have more control over the masses, because what they can do is, they replace God and they can call the shots, and most of the population is going to fall in line. So that, I do believe a big piece of it is trying to hide the creator. And a lot of the problems, Patricia, that we have in the world is because people are disconnected from source. It's a big, big problem. And the religions we have today, they're all man-made religions. That's the other problem. So they have replaced spirituality with religion, but religion is not spirituality. So you have this whole complex dynamic going on where they're trying to separate people out, segment them, put them in little boxes, and keep them separated from source. So your point about the creator, hiding the creator, and being disconnected to source being a problem with humanity, I agree with.
We're so much focused on money, all of us, all over the plane. And whether you like it or not, it affects everyone, whether it's lack of money, lack of food, lack of housing, or making money, stepping on others to get more, gaining materialism, etc. That's our God these days. And of course, the government, I guess, is our daddy.
Yeah. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. That's the old adage, and it's so true. So money has become so important to just about everybody. And I'm not going to lie, it's important to me too, because we have to operate, we have to survive in this matrix. And if you don't have money, and if you don't have the means, then you're going to go homeless, or you're not going to have medical care, or you're not going to be able to eat. You have to pay to live in this system.
Isn't that crazy? Think about it. My cats don't have to pay to live. The animals outside, the birds, the cows, they don't have to pay to live. We do. Why?
Because that's the system, right? Because humanity is being oppressed. We're shackled. And unfortunately, most of the masses don't even realize that they're shackled. They don't realize that they're imprisoned, that we actually live in a containment area. As long as people believe that they can go shopping, or they could buy the newest gizmo technology wise, go out drinking, watch their sports and do stuff like that, they think in terms that they're free. And that's not freedom. That's an illusion. That's an illusion to keep you seatbelted in so that you don't critically think, and you don't free think, and you don't ask questions. They don't want people to ask questions. That's like George Carlin said, they just want people to operate the machines. That's what they want. So, that's the predicament that we have going on in the truth movement and the alternative research community. That's our biggest obstacle, is to get people to realize that they are contained. And it's very difficult because they don't believe they are. They believe as long as they can go outside and go visit a friend, like I said, go shopping or whatever, we're crazy. for saying that they're really not free. So it's an uphill battle, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. And sometimes it gets to be very frustrating. You think to yourself, why am I doing this? I have moments like that. Why do I continue to do this?
I think all of us feel that way. Anyone watching this video feels that.
You would be
way.
lying if you said you didn't have that feeling every once in a while, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. You take a lot of abuse from people who are paid to hand out a lot of abuse, and you take abuse also from people that they don't know any better. I mean, they're in the arena of being ignorant, and I don't mean the word ignorant to be to make people
Demeaning.
angry,
Right.
but they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and instead of figuring out what it is that they should go pursue or seek truth, they just hunker down into what they've been told. In other words, it's they have an authority. They love authority, and authority tells them what to do, when to do it, how to think, what to believe. And again, and couple that with the fact that they think that they're free. There's no reason to listen to you or me or anybody else who's putting information out there to help them to come to a realization that there's more to it than what they've been told.
They've made a beautiful prison for us, so beautiful that we don't really realize it's a prison until you wake up. And I love being alive. I love Earth. I love the plane. I love my daily life. But I do know what we're working with here. And I don't know sometimes what I'm pushing for other than for people to wake up. But to what end? Overthrowing the governments, getting rid of NASA, just subverting the whole paradigm. Do you ever think that we're doing this because we want truth? We want to know where we live, but to what end?
Yeah. Okay. I do have a theory on this. And I, at one time, was on the path that there's going to be a change, a physical change to the physical apparatus all around us, to the matrix. And then you come to the realization, or at least I did, that.
Were you ever involved in end of the world, doomsday, end times? Is that where you were thinking about the physical change?
No, I was thinking that if we woke up enough people, that if we had critical mass, whatever critical mass means, I don't know what that number is, that we would be able to usher in, right, a new way of doing things, a new age of how to be governed, or I don't mean to probably say to be governed, but how to have our government running. I don't think it's possible at this point in time to have, let's say, a pure libertarian or anarchy, because anarchy doesn't mean without rules; it means without rulers, right? And they've taken that word and they've kind of muddied the waters on that. I just think that we have been, when I say we, I mean everybody, have been so indoctrinated, so propagandized, and so conditioned over so long a period of time that it's impossible to just tomorrow, as an example, to say, okay, we're all going to live without a government tomorrow. It's going to be purely libertarian or anarchy without rulers. And every person is going to govern themselves, is going to regulate themselves, and so on. The problem with that is that the conditioning has been going on for so long that so many people wouldn't even know where to start to do that. You see?
Yes. And then there's the haves and have nots. If things changed today and we had to govern ourselves, there are people who've been under the thumb of government and other people for so long. They're angry and they might take to the streets. And the people who have will be locking themselves up in their castles, protecting themselves and all of their possessions. So that's not going to work.
No, that's not going to work. But there was a lot of folks in the truth movement that were going down that path, and not that I don't think it's a good way to go. It's just that I don't think it's very feasible, and I don't think it's reality at this point in time. I think it's going to take many, many years, maybe even 100 years of becoming reacclimated to the way we're supposed to be living. So it's not going to happen next week. But so I gave it a lot of thought. over time. And then I've concluded that I believe the change that we're making is metaphysical. I believe it's a spiritual awakening and a spiritual awareness. And people will say, well, Mike, what does that mean? So what I believe happens, Patricia, is that when we come down here, when we incarnate into Earth, into this realm of Earth, I believe that we have multiple dimensions or realms, layers of Earth. So we are in one. So think of these dimensions as blankets that lay on top of each other. And let's just say we're in the middle blanket, and that middle blanket is this domain, it's this realm. And in this realm, this is how it is. It's like a school, it's a curriculum. You come here, you learn. Now, to the degree that you figure out that it's an illusion, to the degree that you figure out it's a matrix and you understand what's going on, that's the degree in which you will illuminate your soul. So when you leave this realm and you cross over, you will have additional opportunities open to you, open to your soul with the next incarnation or the next task at hand to enrich the soul and to develop the soul so that you get closer to source.
Do you think that would be somewhere again on this plane, as in reincarnation, or moving somewhere else?
It could be here in a role as a soul that comes to help others to awaken. Okay, that's one role that can be played. So you can come back, but you come back as a teacher. You come back as a soul that is trying to get more souls to wake up. So, but since more doors are open to you, you can opt to maybe not do that. You can perhaps go to another realm, maybe the next layer of the blanket up, where it's very much like here, but very different. In other words, it may look very similar, but the construct of how people deal with each other, the compassion, the empathy, and so on could be very, very different, much more pleasant. And of course, as you develop more and more, then there's another rung on the ladder. And the higher you go, the better it gets. You see? Now, you'll hear some people say that we are trapped here, souls are trapped. And I don't believe that at all. But there is a piece of it where the soul can be trapped, and it's the soul's own doing. So in other words, if you don't wake up, if you operate in this illusion as if it's reality, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to come back here and do it all over again. And you're going to have to keep cycling through until you figure it out. And if you don't figure it out for a very long time, then you're going to have a very long time of incarnations in this circus, in this realm, which is not pleasant. So that's how I think that that's a possibility, I should say, where I think that's how it could work. Because the reason I came to that conclusion, Patricia, is because there has to be some kind of, I don't want to even use the word reward, but there's got to be some positive result that comes out of people who are trying to expose the truth and trying to awaken people. It can't be that you do all this work, you do all this research, you have all this compassion and empathy and motivation only to have the door slammed on your face. I believe universal law, it kicks in. And so you're going to have a karma that says, hey, you've done the things that you needed to do. And so here you go, boom. And you just keep moving up and moving up and moving up. So that's what I've been trying to tell folks. Look, if you're going to stay bolted down in your chair and you're going to think that this is the greatest place since the light bulb and nothing has to change, then you're going to be on this train for a very, very long time, until you figure it out.
So our job here is to really illuminate ourselves and sort of become the Illuminati, not that Illuminati, but our own Illuminati, so that then we have illuminated ourselves in order to take in more knowledge and then teach others.
Yes. Yeah. So it is an illumination of the soul. And the word, illumination it's gotten tarnished because of the Illuminati, right? But there's different types of illumination, depending upon how you want to apply it, right? So I'm using it in a very positive sense. Of course, they think they're using it in a positive sense too, but they're being very selfish with how they're using it. But I do think that for those who are awake, becoming awake, those that continue to pursue the awareness and are here to help others, you're going to be rewarded. Once, like I said, we cross over, there'll be more doors open for more opportunities for the soul to go do other things other than to come here and battle it out.
But we're not doing this, any of us. I'm talking to you and others who are watching this at a later time other than our May 15th, 2017 day of recording, or those in the live chat. We're not doing this because we want to be rewarded. We're doing this because we found out information, and I feel like we have no choice. This is what we are drawn to do. And there are many who are not drawn to do it. And I think we can wake people up. We can try to wake people up, but some people can't be awakened. What does that mean about them? I'm not saying they're bad, but why won't they budge?
Yeah, well, that's part of the dynamic. There are going to be people that will not budge. And that's why this is a school. So when you come down to this school, you're going to be thrown into the mix with huge portions of the population that won't move. It's very frustrating. So part of the lesson is, what is it like? What's the experience like to be disconnected from source? What does disconnected from source, what does it mean? How does it feel? How does it look? Take a look around you. This is how it is. People don't care about anything. People are apathetic. They have no empathy. They have no compassion. There are people that do, don't get me wrong, but we see it more and more now. We see people get injured in the streets. I've seen videos on this, and people just walk by this person. They don't offer to help. They don't lend a hand. And so that's not how humanity is supposed to be operating. Yet there are humans that operate like that every single day. It's like the person that will try to get ahead in life, not caring at all about how many people he hurts along the way, he or she hurts along the way. It's all about them. It's all about service to self, not service to creation, serving creation. So it's this very, very inward looking, very selfish mindset, which has permeated, I'm going to, all of Western society for sure. I mean, I can't speak for some of the other societies because I don't live there and we don't get a whole lot of information about, other than propaganda about those other places. But I'm going to
propaganda. So we don't look into any other ways that might be better than the way we're living.
But, if we take a look at how Western civilization, how it thrives, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's lowest level denominator stuff.
Dog eat dog, as they say, step on other people's backs to get to the top. And people who are doing that, they're unaware they're doing it. They've been trained somehow to do it. And when pointed out, even nicely, they won't recognize it. They'll say things like, well, I'm a good person. Just because I do this or do that, or, lied about that guy and then got his job, whatever the case may be. They just think it's the way the world works, and you must be aggressive and you have to be mean and nasty to get ahead. I don't know how to stop it. And I think that we're not supposed to stop it. We're not supposed to really bother with that. We put the information out there, and those who are ready will take it. And those who are not, that's really on them. They may eventually wake up, but if they don't, you've done your part.
Yeah, I don't have a responsibility to wake up somebody who doesn't want to wake up. I have a responsibility to put information out there to help people that want to wake up. But if you're going to sit there like a lug nut and, and just push back and ignore and be apathetic, and like I said, have no empathy or compassion, get really ugly, nasty, belligerent, we see that, right? I mean, all the time. Then I have no responsibility for you. You have to be responsible for yourself. And if you're going to operate that way, and that's the type of person you're going to be, well, there are consequences for that. It's the law of cause and effect. For every cause there's an effect. For every effect there's a cause. And there is karma. And if you think that you're going to go about your life operating a certain way, as an example, you mentioned people that are stepping on other people to climb the ladder in life. That's a life of focusing on and thriving in the material world and materialistic types of things. I mean, is that what life is really all about? You get a big house and then you die? I mean, really? But there are people that believe that. And there are people who have spent their entire lives chasing that dream of acquiring wealth and acquiring all these material possessions. And what's happened is, as they do that, they have forsaken their families and their children. They haven't lived. They haven't lived. And many times they will get to a certain age as they get older, and then they will look back and they will say to themselves, I made a big mistake. I shouldn't have spent so much time at work, or I shouldn't have spent so much time being mean to people. Yeah, you're right. You shouldn't have, but guess what? It's just a tad bit too late right now. Okay. So the thing is, my point being is, there is that little spark, even in the folks that really are not paying attention to doing the right thing most of the time, or even all of the time. At some point, this little spark, this little glimmer taps them on the shoulder and says, you know what? You did things, and perhaps you didn't do what you were supposed to do, really supposed to do.
Yes. And we're all trying to figure out what we're really supposed to do. And there are many of us, and we all know them, who have awakened, and I'm not going to name any names, but who are, even though they're awake and spreading truth, they're also spreading some maliciousness on the side. What is that about? Is that to teach those of us to have tolerance who are awake and not spreading maliciousness? Well, I don't understand what that's for. If you're awake, why would you want to hurt others?
Well, I would say you're not awake if you're hurting others, period. Okay. So you can think you're as brilliant as you want to believe you are. But if you do it in a way that is spiteful and hurts other people, then you're not awake. You're just not. I don't care what your practices are. I don't care, what you're doing spiritually or any of that stuff. If you're going to hurt other people along the way, even if you're trying to spread the truth, then you're not doing the right things. You're not awake, because awake doesn't mean that I know 9/11 was an inside job, or I know that the earth is not a globe. That's an awareness that you have, but awake goes way beyond the events that we figured out that were illusions or deceptions, right? It's who are you at a soul level? That's what it is. And if you're going to behave in a way, like I said, that is going to hurt people, you're not awake.
You have so many people in our live chat. I'm looking on my phone saying, yes, yes, with exclamation points at what you said. And I definitely agree too. Rebel, one of the people here in our live chat says some people are already dead inside. Is there a chance, though, that there are people who are technically awake, who are doing some nasty stuff, that they will have an awakening upon their awakening soon and say, hey, wait, we're all in this together? Or no?
No, that could happen. Typically, that happens when there's something that happens in their life, something that is not associated usually with, the work that they're doing, where they're exposing truth, yet they're doing it in a very negative way, or, many times in a negative way. So let's just say, as an example, what will happen, Patricia, is there'll be a death in the family, or somebody will come down with an illness. Somebody in the family, maybe a spouse or partner, has cancer. So then what happens is, all of a sudden, everything that was important yesterday, all of the stuff that you thought that, just put you on top of the mountain, you realize that that stuff doesn't really mean all that much at the end of the day. And so now you're being pulled in a different direction. So this is where many of these people will, and I'm just picking those types of situations because I've seen it happen, where they will get a different perspective. And they will then, after these types of events, will start to treat people better. Okay, because up until that point, they haven't had a situation where they had to perhaps maybe show an abundance of compassion or empathy. One of the things that always gets me with this is that why people just can't let other people have an opinion and or direction in life without judging them, without beating them up, without vilifying them, and going after them and attacking them. I don't understand it. I mean, as an example, I have another channel, and my other channel has nothing to do with any of this. I fix and repair guitars. I build guitars, I repair guitars.
I want to talk to you about guitars as well. I've got my guitar here, so
I see. I see.
I can't play. It's really a prop. Not really. I got it on as a bucket list. I want to learn how to play guitar, and I've had a couple of lessons, and I'm really horrible. So I want to admit that, and I say that often so people don't think I'm a poser. But yes, you've got a great channel, and you talk about guitars, and it's lovely to have a hobby or a passion when it comes to music. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And even on that channel, Patricia, I have to I monitor the comments, and the reason is because even when I do a video on how to fix a guitar or how to upgrade a guitar or how to refurbish a guitar, I mean, what could be negative about somebody showing you how to refurbish a guitar from the 1970s?
Are you a shill for guitars?
you know, and I will periodically get these comments that are just so off the wall, so nasty, and so belligerent, and it's amazing to me. And I sit there and sometimes I can't even say in amazement anymore because I'm so beyond that. But I look at these people and I think to myself, what is wrong with you?
Well, that's
why
the
can't
thing.
you behave yourself?
It is what is wrong with them. And sometimes when you see these purposely hurtful comments on whatever subject, you're talking about, guitars or flat earth or 9/11 or, how your face looks or whatever it is, it's not directed toward you. They are projecting what's inside them, which is dark and hurt and full of pain. And you have to almost feel sorry for them. And eventually, hopefully, they will illuminate and move away from the darkness.
Hopefully, but it's true what you're saying is what's happened, what's happening to many folks is that when confronted with a different opinion or a different viewpoint or facts and evidence that contradict what they've been taught, what they know, they become extremely defensive because people like to live in a box. They like to have a nice box with a big bow slapped on it, and they like to define their world and their life a certain way. And this is it. Humans like things to be simple. They like simple explanations to complex questions. They just like things to be simple. And so when you turn around and say, well, you know what, it doesn't exactly work that way, I don't think. And let me give you a couple of pieces of information here that might be of interest to you. And some folks, of course, will listen and they'll have ears, and that's good. And others, though, they will vehemently just push back and attack because you are challenging their worldview. They do not want their world to change. I've defined it a certain way. It works this way. I have spent so much time figuring out how my world works, and now you're coming along and you're trying to screw it up. I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want anything to do with your ideas or your theories or your opinions or any of that stuff. And I think that that's many times what happens. There's a threat to what they understand as how the world works, how their world works, how their life operates, who the institutions, they've defined who these institutions are, what the government is, what the Supreme Court is, who the politicians are. And when you turn around and you tell them, well, that's really not who they are or how it works, they don't want to hear it. And some of them will just walk away, turn it off. Others will attack. So I think that that's is a big mix of how it works. But I think, when you step into their world and they don't want you in their yard, they want to kick you out.
Hey, kid, get out of my yard. Now, a couple of people in our live chat have mentioned your Ron Paul t-shirt, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about it.
Yes.
Well, tell me all about your feelings for Ron Paul. Have they changed? Do you vote? All of them now that you've, moved forward with the way you think about the world.
Yeah, I love Ron Paul. I've loved Ron Paul for a very long time. I'm not as big a fan of his son, Rand. I think Rand is a pseudo libertarian. Ron, in my view, is a libertarian. Libertarian. Do I vote? Okay, so I'll explain this, and there's going to be people that are going to go,
Oh, you know what? No matter what, there's always people that are going to go, no
Okay,
matter what.
so this election, this past election, I wasn't going to vote, and what had happened was 3 or 4 weeks before the election, Trump was saying all the right things, aside for his affinity for Israel and what goes on there, which I want nothing to do with. Um, the United States is a vassal of Israel, and that's another problem that people don't understand. But that's a discussion for another show. But just setting that aside for the moment, and I realize it's a very big set aside.
I
All
think
the
that
other
most people in Flat Earth who are awake are aware of the whole thing when it comes to Israel and know that all Jews aren't bad and some
no,
Jews are bad and Judaism is a religion. Some people say it's a race. Well, either way you look at it, you can't take one brush and tar an entire people. So,
no.
yeah.
We're talking about the Zionists, and
Right.
that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the Zionists,
We're
and
pretty much all on that same page.
yeah, and I have like I have friends who are Jewish, and they are just as stuck in this matrix as I am.
And there's Jews who are completely awake as well. And,
Exactly,
you know,
exactly right. So when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about the Zionists that are running the show, and unfortunately, they have a death grip on most of the West, and especially the United States. Um, but I voted for Trump, and now I'm hearing a collective groan in the chat
well,
room,
I
probably.
remember talking to DITRH about the
Yeah, David.
election.
Yep.
And he and I were saying things like, well, if somebody put a gun to my head and I had a vote, I'd vote for Trump because I know he's a puppet. I know it's selected, not elected. I understand all of those things, but it would at least be something different.
Yeah, and that's how I looked at it. I looked at it this way. First of all, I of course know that um, no person sitting in the White House, the buck does not stop there. They have
There's no red
controllers.
button that they've got their finger
No,
on.
no. These people do not really run anything. There are controllers behind them, very powerful people and secret societies that run the show. But what I was hoping for was that he was representing a new guard. So it, think of the new guard as factions within the secret societies and within the government institutions, the military and academia and so on, that finally had achieved enough critical mass to take on the old guard. And the old guard is communism. That's what it is. Goes back to goes back before the Bolsheviks, but I'll start there. And I was hoping that with everything that Trump was saying, that we would see at least some positive change, and that the people in this country would see some relief, and relief in the terms of jobs, in relief in terms of reduced tax rates, um, seeing the infrastructure improve, because huge infrastructure projects are going to bring tremendous amounts of employment to people. And so I was really looking for the future. I mean, I have a daughter. I mean, she's a grown woman, but my daughter is in her 30s or early 30s. But I want her to have a good life. I want her to be able to have opportunities for employment, to be able to work. Because today what we have, Patricia, and you know this, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is many, many kids that have gone through college are walking out with 50, 75, $100,000, and even more in student debt, student loans, because the controllers have fixed the system so that you walk out before you even get started with a gigantic amount of money hanging over your head. And many of these kids are graduating with degrees, and they're ending up working in the services industry. They're working in restaurants,
Bars.
bars, in retail, and so on. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working in those jobs. My point being is that if you're working out with a degree in law, or you're an engineer, you should be able to get a job as a lawyer. You should be able to get a job as an engineer. You should be able to pursue what it is that you went to school for the career you wanted to pursue. And so what we have in this country is not many people achieving that. And many folks, young people, are floundering. And they're not going to have the opportunities, Patricia, that you had or I had. It's getting exponentially harder and harder for people to be able to make a living and to be able to achieve anything in their life. And this is a big problem. It's a huge problem. And I mean, I'm 58 years old. So I mean, I can go back in time and I can take a look into the 1970s and the 1980s and so on. And I can tell you unequivocally that life in the 70s and 80s, when I grew up and going into maybe perhaps the early 90s, but that's when things really started to shift about 20 something years ago for the worse. Um, it's very, very different than today. It's much worse today. It's very negative today. It's a whole different culture and society today. The mindset's very different. So I was hoping that to get some breaks from Trump. That's what I was hoping. We weren't going to get everything. I knew that. I wasn't looking for a miracle. I was just looking for some change.
Some real hope and change.
Yes, something that would basically get the wheels going again. You know, we lost the entire manufacturing base in this country. That was by design by the internationalists, by the controllers. You know, they stripped this country out because the United States had too much money, it's too much wealth. You know, and you can't go to a country and say, "Hey, you want to be part of the New World Order? You want to be part of an internationalist society?" You know, and give up your sovereignty and your nationalism, and the country's thriving. They're going to go, "No, we don't need you. Go away." So they had to dismantle it first before they can actually implement it. And that's what happened over the last 25, 30 years. It was a huge concerted effort to dismantle this country, you know, and Europe.
Detroit is a perfect example. It's a ghost town. It looks like something out of a movie. We used to make things. Now, we don't.
Detroit was thriving with the auto industry, right? Mm-hmm. So we can take a look at anywhere in this country and we can see a Detroit. You know, we could just take a look and we can see that things are not good. So, okay, so fast forward, I voted for Trump, hoping, even though I knew it was a stretch, that we would start to see some things positive take place. I knew Hillary Clinton, no, we weren't going to see anything new. We weren't going to see anything positive out of her. I've done a lot of research into the Clinton crime family. I know what they're about.
Yes.
And so there was absolutely zero expectation that, you know, anything was going to get better. Now, you know, Trump is 4 or 5 months into his presidency. And to be honest with you, I'm very disappointed, very, very disappointed. And, you know, I don't know. I told somebody the other day, I said, okay, so you know what? The election in 2016 is the last election that I'm going to vote in. Really. I mean, you know, and I went out on a limb, Patricia. I went out on a limb and I did a video on Facebook to try to get folks to get up and to vote, because if he was going to do even, you know, just half of what he said he was going to do, this country is going to be a better place. But I'm not seeing it pan out. I don't want to say that it's over, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not getting a good feeling.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I'm going to go into our live chat and read some of the comments. Sure. I want to thank Wake the Sheeple, Michael. He has donated $3.33 to the super chat, which is a joke among people when there's a super chat enabled. $3.33. It's not that we're trying to make a profit, but it's just something YouTube offers. So we kind of do it for each other back and forth. And his comment is, Jesuits control the Freemasons, wake up. Some people commenting upon what you were talking about Trump and about really thinking, voting, well, maybe this isn't for me this year, but I'm going to do it anyway because at least I don't want Clinton to get in. And Ukdina Walker says she feels along the lines that you did. She was hoping for the same kind of thing. Awakened Mind says Trump killed the TPP. People are saying things like all is one now says fake shootings have slowed down. So that's maybe attributed to Trump, maybe not. I just think they're regrouping to come up with something else.
Well, I mean, what about Syria? Syria is 2013 replay, you know.
Ukdina says this is the first year that she did not vote. She had hopes for Trump and sigh, she says. So many people are agreeing with what you're saying. So we've got Cami here in our live chat, Stock Jockey, Nathan Oakley, Validation Boy, and Twitwit, and DITRH, as well as Ace McLeod, and so many other people. And I really can't, I'd distract from the show if I were to say hello to all, including Haunted House and Vlad, Flat Still Earth, and Carly Sunshine. I don't want to miss anybody. And I also don't want to make the whole show be about hello, but hello to everyone. And I appreciate,
hello, everybody.
I appreciate all the comments. And Frank is in here too, and Earth Discernment. And I better put my phone down because otherwise I'll just feel very guilty that I haven't named everyone and said hello. But yeah, the voting, I wanted to mention it because of your shirt. And I haven't voted for a long time. Well, the last person I voted for president, Al Gore. So, that's where my head was at the time,
Quite a long time ago.
Yes, indeed. And when I decided that was the last time I would vote, I wasn't really on my awakening path too much yet. I just realized it just never did any good. I remember arguing with somebody about chemtrails back in the 90s. It was a boss at a radio station that I worked for in Napa, arguing with him about that's not normal. And he was saying, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Funny because we've completely lost touch. But right now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. The government's even admitted now what they're doing up there, kind of. They're saying that they're going to be doing it soon.
Oh, yeah. Well, Harvard has their program. They announced that, right? So, yeah, it's underway, officially underway. It's been
officially
underway for a very long time, right? Yep. So, not a conspiracy anymore.
It's exactly. That's why conspiracy realist, all of these things that we talk about and that people say, put on your tinfoil hat about they all happen. It all comes true. And that's why it behooves you to look into as much stuff as possible and then make your own decision to prepare yourself for what's going on and what to opt out of. I'm at the point where I think I just want to opt out of everything. I don't have TV anymore. I don't read magazines. I don't read the newspaper. I see some advertisements when I'm on the internet going, through YouTube and such, but those things, I've made myself bulletproof, and I think many who are watching will feel the same. Bulletproof to advertisements. I don't think the subliminal messages affect me anymore because I know the game they're running. I'm not led to buy certain things that they advertise to me because I realize they're toxic. They're just frivolous and ridiculous. I do have material possessions, as we all do, especially being in my 50s. It just happens kind of as you go through life, and I don't want to throw them out or anything. I mean, I still use my things. But I'm immune to that drug they put us under, that the media, to make us think our whole life is to earn money and then wind up rotting in a grave.
Right. Yeah, I tell folks all the time, Patricia, to at the very least, there's two things you've got to do. One, avoid the debt, because debt is the ace up their sleeve. Once they have you in debt, it's very difficult to get out from under. It's very difficult to recover from, and it will ruin your life. And it brings into your life stress, fears, and worry. And when you have fears, stress, and worry, you do not critical think. I mean, you don't free think. What happens is you're in flight or fight mode. You're in survival mode, not thriving. That's number one. Number two, like you said, turn the TV off and avoid the media completely, because that's nothing more than mass hypnosis. It's propaganda. It's conditioning. That's what it is. And it's 24/7. 365 days a year. It goes on and on and on. So if you're going to plop your butt in front of the TV and you're going to put yourself in alpha state, because that's the trance state you're in when you're watching television, then you're going to be programmed, plain and simple. And that's why they call it programming. It's really funny how they put words out there and, people don't even really think about it. So, so cut the TV off, get away from their radio, get away from their television, their magazines, their newspapers, and get out from under their debt. If you could do those things, then your life will be a lot better. You won't have all the fears that many other people are walking around with. I mean, I have family members and friends that they're worried about stuff, and they ask me like, "Aren't you worried about that?" I said, "No, because it's fake."
Right. Are you worried
Because
about that asteroid they say is going to be coming our way in next week? No. In fact, I'd never have known about it unless you mentioned it to me.
exactly. So I don't spend any time on that stuff. Even the whole thing, as an example, it was in the news for weeks on end, was North Korea and the nukes and all that stuff, right? That's nonsense. And what that is that that's put out there. That is conditioning for the masses. And once you're onto their game, once you understand how they operate, then you don't have that fear factor in your life anymore. You just don't. And it enriches your life. So you don't fall into their traps. You know how to avoid their minefields. And, you're just going to live better because of it.
It's very true because it's not, I'm not saying people should be Pollyanna-esque, that you should just say, oh, everything's wonderful, it's beautiful. Well, it kind of is wonderful and beautiful, and it's also horrible. But you should just realize that they're trying to make you live in fear, and they're also trying to prep you for what game they've got down the road. So just unplug from it all and live your own way and try to be nice to other people. It's not really hard, right?
No, well, not for you and me, but for some people, apparently it is.
Yeah.
Going to be nice. But yeah, you talk about the predictive programming. All you have to do is take a look at all of the predictive programming from 9/11, right? Going back to The Simpsons and so on. So, that's the thing, is that the controllers, and I call them the controllers, and one person mentioned the Jesuits, and they are correct. It's the Jesuits. And there will be people who will argue with me about that. But I've had many discussions
it's the
with
Masons. No, it's the Jews. No, it's the Satanists.
I know it's. I've had many discussions with Jordan Maxwell on this. We would talk offline, and so the man has got 50 years of insight. So and we swap notes. But basically, when I talk to Jordan, I take notes. But yeah, it's the whole apparatus is designed to keep you in fear, plain and simple. And when you're in fear, you're paralyzed. Even if you don't even think you're paralyzed, you are.
You know what you were saying earlier about people get a good education if they want to be, let's just say, lawyer, like you had said. And they go to school, they get that degree, and they come out and they have these oppressive payments for their education that they owe. And then they get a service industry job. Nothing wrong with service industry jobs, but that's not what they went to school for. That was not their passion or their dream. Then they live not only with that debt over their head, but they live in fear. And that fear is fear of having, not being able to put food on the table. And they get caught up in that service industry job. And they also have no time to actually look into truths. And their truths tend to be the truths of the mainstream, which are falsities. So they get trapped with the burden of debt, and trapped with the feeling that they don't have time to try to even make a difference. They don't even understand what making a difference really means because their mind has been shut off and plugged into the matrix for good. It's what they want. It's exactly what they want. Exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, they want paralysis. They want you to be apathetic. They want you to be fearful. They want you to be inactive. They want you to think that there's no hope, that there's no way you can make things better. It's just the way it is. And by the way, if things are not going well, it's your fault. You obviously didn't make good choices. You obviously didn't do the right things.
You're not a hard worker.
Yeah, exactly. You're not a hard worker. Maybe you're not as smart as you think you are, and so on. But the truth of the matter is that the cards are stacked against everybody. And that's how they work it. They stack the cards. And, some people are able to navigate it better than others. And, they will get someplace. But a lot of other people, it's the weight of what they put in front of them and on their backs, like the debt as an example. That's a perfect example. Some people, Patricia, will never get out from under the magnitude of the debt that they have incurred. They will never get out from under it. And, think about that feeling. Think about that's hovering over your head all the time, and you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, how is that going to make you feel getting up in the morning and working and living your life day to day? I mean, you're not going to feel very good. So this is the sad part about how this whole thing works. And that's why I get annoyed sometimes when people just want to hang on, oh, you believe in the flat earth. Like, oh, stop that already. There's just so much more to this that you should be opening your eyes to. You don't like the flat earth? Then don't watch the videos, okay? And focus on the myriad of other things out there that you should be focused on that is making our lives complicated, very complicated. I would tell my daughter when she was growing up, I would say to her that life is complicated enough without you waking up in the morning to complicate it some more, you know? And so, but they try to complicate it some more. They try, when you wake up, they try to present new obstacles to you every single day, So I think people really need to get their heads wrapped around that.
People are going to jobs, be they very high powered jobs or, like we were saying, a job in the service industry, and they're just waiting for their next bonus or their next paycheck. They're saying, well, my January bonus, well, that's going to put me over the top. Then I can relax, and then I can look into fill in the blank, eating more healthfully, exercising, drinking more water, or looking into some of those conspiracies you told me about, Patricia. But why is it that you need to wait until you've got a bonus? Well, it's because in them, that's their most important factor. Right. They need to have the money in order to have the security to relieve that stress that's in them. But they don't realize the stress that's in them is because they're in the system that's making them wait to get the check or the bonus. So
that's right. Well, see, that's what you're explaining there is that they will say, well, I'll look into these other things, but first I have to fix the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing is, my life, where it's at right now. And when I get that bonus, it's going to fix that. And they don't look in terms of, well, that really maybe shouldn't be there. You see, that you're exerting your energy and putting your energy towards something that really shouldn't be a part of your life to that magnitude, let's just say, right? But that's what they do. They say, okay, no. See, so what they're doing is they're looking at all the other stuff about getting healthy, eating organic, understanding vaccines and flu shots, understanding chemtrails and stuff like that. They're putting that's setting that aside as almost like it's a side dish type of thing, kind of a hobby. I'll get to it once I get the main thing fixed up, and then maybe I'll take a look at that stuff. That's how I think a lot of people view it.
And the main thing will never get fixed up because once you get that bonus, it's probably already spent and you're going to be waiting for the next one to come. And you're just on a treadmill. A lot of people are living that life of quiet desperation, as the famous quote goes. And Eric Dubay had a really good video. And it was something along the lines of how to give up your slave job. And I remember seeing that one and thinking, that's really, really, really good advice at any age. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you've got a slave job if you are I'll just throw that word lawyer out again, like we spoke of, because that's very mainstreamy and very, maybe you make a lot of money when you're a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying lawyer because we said it earlier.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you're lost in the matrix if you're a lawyer. But what it is that if you are in a job in which you work to live and live to work, and that's all there is, you will never have the grace, that time to look into the things that really matter. And the only thing that will end up mattering to you is how you can get more money to fuel the need for more money. And right. There's nothing good that will ever come from that. That is not that money is bad. What do they say, that the love of money or something is the root of all evil? Money itself is something that we use here. Would I like a better system? Yes. I understand the monetary system to a pretty good degree, and I've learned that it's just a game, really. It's a shell game. But it's the system that we have to live in. I need to pay my utilities in order to be able to have the internet, to be able to talk to you right now. So I can't just say, I don't need money, I'm going to go live off the land. Some people can. I really admire that. That's not where I am right now in my life. But whatever you can do to cut the cords to the matrix, try to pay off the debt, get out from under it, even if it means selling a bunch of stuff, you will feel so much peace, this level of inner peace that will make you realize what you're supposed to be here for, and then start looking at it. So,
yeah, the key is to simplify your life, and changing your job and getting away from your slave job. It's easier said than done. And it's difficult. It's very perplexing for a lot of people because they have their entire life is tied into whatever their income is with that job, right? So if somebody's making a very decent salary, then they're typically living a lifestyle that requires that level of income, right? So you have a disconnect right away. So if you're going to try to get out of that job, the first question that people think to themselves is, well, I have to find another job that pays the same amount of money. Otherwise, how am I going to do this? So the thing is, there's work that needs to get done before you ever get to that point. And the work beforehand is to simplify, get things down to being very affordable. Like we said, get the debt down. Um, just start pulling the plug on things that are not necessary in your life. I mean, you think they are because you've had them your whole life. But once you start to evaluate it, you think to yourself, well, I don't really need that. It's like when I turned off the television like years ago. And whenever people come to me and say, hey, did you see that news show? I said, I don't watch television.
Me too.
And they look at me like, what? So you weirdo. But what will happen is those very same people down the line, they will start to see their cable bill costing them $150, $175 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then they'll come back to me and I'll say, just cancel it. I'm telling you what, the hardest part of making the decision is making the decision.
Yes.
Once you make the decision and you get over the hump, then you're not going to miss the television. You're just not going to miss it. So it's a matter of breaking the habits that you have, breaking the patterns that you've got yourself into. And once you do that and you start to whittle it back and you simplify your life, then you could very well have the opportunity to get out from under a job that you really don't want to do. Maybe you could do another job. Maybe it doesn't pay as well, but you're okay with that because I don't have the overhead that I used to have that required the other job. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things have to be taken in bite-sized chunks. You just can't like pull the big power cord out of the wall and think everything's going to be okay. I mean, that's, in fact, I wouldn't advise that. Things probably won't be okay.
Yeah, you can't put yourself and your family in jeopardy, but simplifying is the key. And I think many who've come to this flat earth revelation have simplified their life to one degree or another, or were in that process, which is how they stumbled on it in the first place.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Mike Williams of the Sage of Quay Radio Hour. We're about an hour into our interview. We have maybe an hour or more so to go, depending upon if we have enough stuff to talk about. And I have a feeling that we could probably talk for a very long time. But all the information on Mike Williams is in the description box of this video. So please subscribe to his channel and take a look at his blog and all of the other things. We right now have been accused of, I don't mean you and I, but yeah, you and I and everyone who's here watching this and in the chat, being in an echo chamber because we've all awakened. We're all here. We're all awakening to new things all of the time. So we're just in here talking about things we all know about and then bouncing ideas off each other. What can we do to get the idea out there to other people? There are people on YouTube who have other channels who do go out there and do the activism and that kind of thing. Do you think it's a matter of protests and signs, doing a one-on-one on the street with people? What can we do?
That's a good question, because we do get accused of, and sometimes I even think myself that I'm preaching to the choir, mm-hmm. right? Talking to yourself, if you will. Well, I'll tell you what, an approach that I have, and it has to do with my blog. Now, some folks will say to me, Mike, when you do the blog, I've noticed that you will have maybe 1 or 2 guitar videos up, tutorials, how to play this, how to play that, and so on. I may even have some very funny clips up there. I happen to like JP Sears, who does the ultra spiritual videos, and I'll put JP up on the blog. Now, the reason why I do that, Patricia, is because, first of all, I like that stuff. But second of all, what I have found is that you pull people in, because people who like those types of videos, maybe they like guitar videos as an example, they will come to the blog and then they start to poke around. And then they say to themselves, oh, well, what's that about? So they'll click on that video or that article and they'll read something. And I try to work it that way. I find that if you try to use the sledgehammer approach, which is hit people over the head, why can't you just wake up? Can't you see this? That doesn't work at all. It doesn't work. It just creates a lot of stress, animosity, and anger, and that just doesn't work. So I think that what we need to do is we probably need to diversify some more, and we need to step out of, I think, maybe our core topics and see if we can reach people in other ways. And then, they might get interested in a particular show that I did. Let's say I did one recently on how to become a hypnotherapist, and I interviewed my very good colleague Bryn Blankenship, who has a center on the coast of North Carolina. And people will go visit that, and they'll come to my channel, and they'll see the other stuff, and maybe some of the other stuff might pique their interest. A show I just did recently, and I'm going to do this on a periodic basis because I think it's really going to help others to connect and plug in, because they're going to see that they're not alone with with their thinking and where they think the world needs to be. So what I did was a couple of weeks ago, I had put an all points bulletin out on my Facebook page, and I said, look, what I want to do is put a show together where it's just regular people, just friends of mine, and I wanted 3 or 4 friends to step forth. I did not want to interview anybody who was a celebrity or a quote unquote personality in the truth movement or the alternative research community. I just wanted the everyday person, right? Regular person to come on the show and talk about their research and where they're at, about their awakening. And I just uploaded that show a couple of days ago. It's been very, very well received.
It's great. I watched it as well. And
thank you.
Talking among your friends, Facebook friends anyway.
Exactly. And what that does, Patricia, I think, is that it does tend to quiet some of the critics, because a lot of them just think that we're all networked and talking to each other. We all know each other, and we're all in some club, you're in my club, and, David's in my club, and, Sophia's in my club. In other words, we're all kind of like in one room together, and no outsiders allowed. And there are people that think that way. And so what I decided to do was, no, you know what? I'm going to break that wall down, because it's not like that at all. It's not like that at all. And so that show was very well received. I mean, it's got about a little over 1,000 views right now, which it's not too bad. People like the brand name in the headline when you do a YouTube, right? They see somebody's name that they recognize and they gravitate toward that. But I think that I'm going to do more shows like that, because I think it's important for those that are listening and feeling a certain way, but feel like they don't have a voice, or they feel like maybe they're the lone wolf. They're out there by themselves. Nobody's really listening. Are there really people out there that think the way I do? And my answer is yes, there are. So I'm going to continue to do shows like that. But I think doing stuff like that could be helpful too. How many shows can you do with the same names of people? After a while, what happens is you start to repeat yourself.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I feel I'm guilty of that as well. And I know, as you're saying, you are too. But then again, we do have this affinity with each other, those watching the live chat now, and those who are watching this at a later date. As you were saying, it's like a club, but it's not an exclusive club. Anybody can be a member. All you need to do is just have a questioning mind. But it is great to branch out and bring new people in who do feel alone, because most of us don't have. Some are lucky and have a partner who's involved in this sort of world, or a friend. But most of us go through our daily activity as the lone wolf, the only one who's thinking these particular thoughts when we see some programming going on a billboard, or what we all see. It's nice to connect with other people who feel the same and elbow them and go, "Did you see that?" And then they laugh and they see it too. But reaching out to other people who don't feel that they have that platform that perhaps you do on your channel and on your blog is great, because it just brings more people into the mix. And we do need more people. To what end, I don't know, but I guess little drops of water can flood a place, and maybe we're all just those little drops of water. building the level higher.
Well, I also think that it allows people to maybe start thinking, maybe I should do my own show. Maybe,
Yes.
right? So look, when I started a little over 3 years ago, and I never did this before. I never did this before. In fact, I've got a funny story. I guess it's kind of funny if you have time, but how I got started. Basically, what happened was I was doing interviews that had to do with hypnosis. Um, I'm a master hypnotherapist, and I would be asked to do interviews. There's this one guy, he's a good guy, Bob Charles. He had a radio show. I think he still has it. And he would have me on to talk about past life regression and clinical hypnosis and so on. And I would do that. But on the side, I was doing the blog, you know? So I had kind of this alter ego thing going. But Bob knew because Bob was reading the blog. And then he came to me and said, Mike, you should do your own show that has to do with conspiracy. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't have the time to do that. I'm not doing it. And he kept going at it and going at it. So finally, long story short, I did it. And as I got started, then I thought to myself, okay, well, I did the first two shows. It was basically me doing a monologue. And this is not going to last very long. I mean, how long am I going to be able to monologue?
Were you scared when you did it first? Going on solo alone, not easy.
Yeah, no, it's very hard. And I had notes and I did it live. Those shows back in those days were live, So I'm sitting there, I cotton-mouthed, sweating, trying to make sure I don't make a fool out of myself. But then what happened was I moved to the pre-recorded, and the reason why I did that was because I started to line up guests, and they're all over the world, and I couldn't get them at certain times. I mean, you can't get, somebody's in Australia, whatever, or they're out in the UK. You have these time differentials, and to sync them up, I just said, okay, I'm going to do pre-recorded shows. But the way I got started was my first big show was with David Icke. And I did not know David Icke other than knowing his material and reading his books and so on.
It's amazing that you interviewed David Icke. That's a pretty big catch for one of your first big shows.
It was amazing. I mean, and it was total sheer luck. Somebody I know had his email and said, well, here's his email. And I said, okay. And so I sent him this email and I told him I was just starting this radio show up. I mean, it was just brand spanking new. I never expected the man to respond, Patricia. So like 3 or 4 days later, I get an email back. He says, hey, mate. He goes, sure, I'll come on your show.
Nice. That shows he's got a kind heart. I mean, people say a lot of things about him, that he's part of the control grid. He's a gatekeeper. But I learned a lot from him as I moved through varying people, learning and growing.
There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that David has researched and put forth that, he should be getting accolades for today. There's other things that he's put out there that he probably
shouldn't
have. Okay. But, be that as it may, nobody's perfect and he has his theories and his research and so on. So I always tell people, take what resonates and what doesn't, just leave there. Don't pulverize somebody because, you agree with 8 of 10 things and the 2 things that you don't agree with, you're going to trash them. Don't do that. Take the 8 things, enrich yourself and move forward. The second person was Max Egan.
You're hitting it out of the ballpark 2 in a row there.
A total luck, Patricia. I mean, I was listening to Max's podcast. I loved Max's podcast. He was a big part of my awakening. And so I sent him an email. I think it was through Facebook. Yeah, it was through Facebook. And Max got back to me like a day or 2 later and said, yeah, Mike, I'll come on your show. So I want to thank personally David Icke and Max Egan for kicking it off. And that was really a big win, those 2 guys coming on, because after that, when I went to other guests and they saw that Icke and Egan were on the show, they were more apt to say, yeah, I'll come on your show. That's just how it works, folks. I mean, you can say what you want about people waiting to see bigger names show up on the marquee, but unfortunately, that's how it works. So, and that's how the ball got rolling a little over 3 years ago.
Interesting. People often say that what we need in the Flat Earth Awakening is somebody big, a big name to come forward. And for a while, there was a lot of pressure being put on Max and some pushback as well. And what do you think? You've spoke with him personally. Do you think he's cracking? Do you think he's going to look into Flat Earth more seriously as time goes by?
Um, I think it's possible. Now, I'll just say this. I think Max has done some unbelievable work. He has really put himself out there. I think personally, my personal viewpoint is he should never have taken on the flat earth debate. In other words, if it wasn't something that was making his boat float, then there's no reason to attach yourself to it one way or the other. Because even when you go after it and you're saying, well, I don't agree with it, I believe it's a psyop, which is what Max was saying, right?
Yes.
What happens is you're actually calling attention to yourself. And he would say, this is a psyop and it's distracting from the real issues that need to be looked at in the world. And of course, he's very dedicated to what's going on in Palestine, as an example, right? In fact, Max was beaten very badly about 2 or 3 years ago after he did a presentation on the whole thing on Zionism in Israel and Palestine, right? So, Max is a trooper. But when Max was, you know, engaging in the flat earth debate and saying that it's a psyop, he was actually bringing the attention to it that he didn't want.
Right. He was distracting from Palestine.
He was distracting from his own message.
Mm-hmm.
Because then people started going after him and so on. So my view is that doesn't bother me whether Max is on board with flat earth or not. It does not bother me at all.
It would be nice, but
it would be nice. But the thing is, at the end of the day, Patricia, it really doesn't, it doesn't matter. Max has got his thing that he focuses on, and the issue in Palestine and with Israel is very important, and a lot of work, his energy goes there. But
it's tied in too with Israel and what we were speaking of when we started the show. It is all tied. Everything's tied to flat earth. But
yeah, I think that Max probably thinks, I'm sure he's a smart guy. So I'm sure that he's looking at it. Part of the problem might be, and I don't know anything, I'm just saying, this is conjecture here. Part of it might be like, okay, well, now how do I backtrack on this thing? How do I swing around? Right. It's Michael Tellinger came around, right?
yes.
That was huge. That was huge because there were, I have friends of mine that they have written books and they're doing lectures and seminars and they're out in Europe doing this and doing that. And they're talking about alien race seeding and UFOs and all of this stuff and, different planets and going on and on. The whole heliocentric globe construct. And they're developing theories about the origins of humanity and so on about this stuff. And I've actually said to them, I said, you better take a look at the flat earth. Okay, just take a look at it. Don't ridicule it. Take a look at it, because if you keep going down the track you're on, and if the flat earth pans out, you're going to look pretty dull.
Right. They're building a castle in the sand at that point.
The whole thing's going to collapse.
Right.
It's going to implode, So anyway, I digress there a little bit. But I think with Max, I think that, is it possible that Max could come around? Yes. But I think maybe Max is thinking that this is not his forte, that this is really not where he wants to spend his time and his energy,
Fair enough. We need people waking people up in all areas.
Right. So I think that that's where Max should be, because that is his strong point, and he brings a lot of information and a wealth of knowledge to the world by focusing on the things that he does focus on.
Let me go into our live chat and say hello to Humana Story and Red Pill Productions and Joey Sylvie and Five Arts Liberalis. And, well, DITRH just said Mike nailed it. So a lot of people are saying yes about what you just said there, because I know that DITRH is a person who does respect the work of Max Egan. Zoe of Be Here in Love is in our chat as well. And Mr. Matty Moses, proprietor, Wide Open, Lane Smith, Flat Trotter SS, and so many others. Thanks to everyone for being here. If you do have a question in the next minute or so, put it in all caps for Mike Williams, and I will attempt to read it here, and maybe we'll see if we can get some answers. So you spoke a little bit about guitars, and the show's called Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes, and I know guitars aren't hot potatoes, but music and what it does for humans, how it brings about a sense of contentment and connectedness, is a wonderful thing. And you're a musician. tell us about how you got into music, your love of guitars, and recordings you've done.
Well, it all started because I was a very weird little kid. And
That's how all passions probably start.
this is the God honest truth, Patricia. I was, let me see, when did Yellow Submarine come out? 1968. So I was 9 years old. And I remember loving the Beatles at 9 years old. And I remember, but my brother was a year and a half younger than I. And he was also into the Beatles. And we had begged my father to take us to go see Yellow Submarine at the local movie theater, which bored my father out of his skull. But we loved it, especially the end, when the real Beatles came out and not the cartoon version. And so what happened was when I was young, probably around, 13, 14 years old, I started playing guitar, and I really didn't know. I taught myself. I'm all self-taught, and I bought songbooks and, easy guitar songbooks, and I taught myself chords and stuff like that. And as I got older, I started to look more into different styles and like my lead guitar playing, as an example. I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix freak, and so I studied Jimi Hendrix, his style of guitar playing, and so that permeates my lead guitar playing. Um, the Beatles songwriting techniques and how they crafted songs is huge. Um, um, in my way of writing music, I fall back on it. In fact, many people will say, "Boy, your music sounds very Beatlesque," and it's because I studied the Beatles songwriting techniques and how they recorded and so on. But I had other bands that was huge in my life. Led Zeppelin. I love Led Zeppelin. There's also a band out of Canada. Maybe there's some Canadians in the chat that know Klaatu, Klaatu. They were a band that should have been great. They should have had fame and fortune, but they didn't go anywhere. But they wrote some great music. I think they had like 5 albums. So I had a lot of influences. And then in the 1980s, I was writing original music, and originally I had a band, and I was trying to secure a recording contract, and I was so naive. And I just thought, well, if you just write good songs and you have a good band, they're going to open the door. They're going to listen to you. Wrong, So that was my first taste of how closed it all was. And if you had sent any demo tape, excuse me, to any of the major recording labels like Capitol or Elektra or any of the big labels at the time, they would send you would get it back immediately that they did not take unsolicited material, which means you had to have an agent and so all that stuff. I had some minor interest from some smaller labels, but at that point, what was happening was everybody was getting to the point where, you can't pay the bills with no income, So everybody had to go and get a quote unquote real job. Right.
Right.
So, but I continued to write, and I was trying to secure publishing contracts for a period there. And then in the 1990s, my brother had a recording studio. He lived at the time in Maryland, and we were doing a lot of Weekend Warrior stuff. And we wrote a lot of I thought, really good songs. But at that point, we had stopped with trying to get the music published or record contracts. We were just doing it because it was fun. We just did whatever. It was very experimental, a lot of the music. And, we just enjoyed just being creative without having to force it into some kind of pop formula. Right. So then what happened was, it was a long, long time when I was still playing guitar, but I was very invested in my career. I worked in the corporate world for over 30 years. And so I know a little bit about something, how they can suck the life out of you. And then it was, I guess, in 2011. Again, I was still playing. But in 2011, this thought just came to me, and it said, I'm going to write an album. I'm going to release an album. I'm going to write a bunch of songs, and I'm going to release an album. So that commenced in late 2011. The album is called Leaving Dystopia.
And you were already awake by then, especially since now I know the title.
Yes, I was very much awake. And so I spent a good portion of 2012 recording the songs. I did 9 originals, and I did a remake of John Lennon's Working Class Hero. And I released the album in January or February of 2013. So it's been out there now for 4 years. And I am trying to get a follow-up album out, and it's just been a little difficult because of just life,
Yes.
just trying to get my practice and the radio shows and the blog and just family and stuff,
Interviews
trying.
like this, taking your time.
But this is good stuff. This is fun stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I do have 6 tracks down, and I want to put 10 tracks out on the album. So I have 4 more songs. I have the songs written. I just have to sit down, record them, and I want to have it out by the end of this year. So, so the second album I'm shooting for the end of this year. The first album, you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to laboroflovemusic.com. I haven't updated the site in a long time, so bear with me. But if you go there, you can also get a copy of the album there. So it was a bunch of songs I put together to basically try to get people to awaken through music, because like you mentioned, music, we're so connected into music, and it resonates with everybody. And it's a great way to communicate. It's a great way to get the message out. And so that was my thought. My thought was, well, I'm just going to, I'll get my message out through music. And the album was, it's well received. Again, it's very difficult when you do it independently. There's no mass marketing. You got to do everything on your own. It's done okay. I'm still picking up royalties, from people streaming the album on the various streaming sites and such, and maybe buying the album, the actual CD itself off of Amazon. And so it's still getting play. The song that you hear in the very beginning of my show,
Yes.
that's mine.
Yes.
The song is called Truth. And
I've got to be me. That.
Yes. Yeah, that song. Yeah. And typically I have another song at the very end, and that's from that album. But I'm really looking forward to getting new material out there, fresh material.
Right.
Because believe it or not, you do get tired of hearing your own songs.
Well, so Leaving Dystopia, there's a link to it in the description box of this video. What's the new album going to be named? I mean, or you have not come up with that yet?
Hollow Moon. And that's the name I have.
That name is very interesting, Hollow Moon. For people who don't know anything about any conspiracy whatsoever, they'll just think, oh, that's kind of neat. But then other people will remember the Truman Show and there being a controller inside the moon. And it just has all sorts of meanings for those of us who are on this journey of exploration.
And I leave it wide open. And I let, make it a metaphor, if you will, right? So people will interpret it the way they want to interpret it. It's really funny, because even when you write songs, you will write lyrics and you have a very, you have rhyme and reason behind why you wrote those lyrics. It's a life experience, as an example. And as you're writing them and you put them down and you record it, you're thinking, well, people are going to understand what this song is about. They're going to understand, that what I'm doing here and how I was feeling and what the song's about. And it's amazing. It's like people will listen to that song and they will not interpret it the way in which I thought it was going to be interpreted. So that's always very interesting to me. And that's why I said you have to really leave it as a metaphor. People will fill in the blanks, based upon what's going on in their life.
Art's open to interpretation, but the one who created it does have a specific meaning in mind. But it's okay if you have a different opinion about what it means, because it's supposed to do something to you when you see it or when you hear it or when you eat it or feel it, depending upon, we're talking about cuisine or, sculpture, whatever it may be.
Yeah, what's funny is one of the songs on the album is called, the title is Free. And the song is about being free. It's about stop telling me what to do, that I'm my own person. I can think for myself and so on, right? So I ran into a friend of mine, and she had the album, and she came to me. She goes, I really, really like that song, Free. She goes, that must have been a horrible relationship you were in. And I said, well, it has nothing to do with relationships. But it was funny because it was so disconnected. But like I said, people will interpret it the way they want to interpret it.
Well, I asked people to put in all caps questions. So I'm hoping all of these questions are actually appropriate questions. If they're not, I'm sorry. We do have somebody asking about 432 hertz tuning for guitar. Have you explored that?
Yes, I have tried it. And with this album, I'm going to do some songs in 432.
That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm one of these people that can discern the difference between 432 and 440. Some people can't. Mark Devlin, who's a friend of mine, Mark does he's looking into he's a deep research into the music and entertainment industry. He's done some brilliant work. He's got a book out there. God, I forgot the name of his book. Mark, forgive me. But anyway.
I think I may have heard him. Maybe I'm wrong. It's a different person on the Higher Side Chats.
Oh, could very well be.
Maybe.
Could very well
you
be.
would fit in well there if it's not the
Yeah, Mark and I have gotten into musical truth. That's what it's called, musical truth. And Mark did a lecture in one of the open mind conferences, I think it was, and he played tracks where it was the instruments were tuned to 432 versus 440. And I can tell the difference. And he did a blind test. In other words, he didn't tell the audience which was which, you know. So 432 resonates more with humans. It's a softer sound. It's 440 tends to be a little harsh. And so that's another area where people, you know, researchers have said that they've altered that because it makes it more difficult for us to resonate, you know, in the right way with the music. So they've changed the frequencies, the frequency response. And, you know, frequency response is humans are
everything.
You know, everything. Right. So, and that's another thing that a lot of folks don't understand. So, yeah. So the answer to that person's question, I plan on doing a couple of songs in 432. I got to tune down a little bit.
All right. So thanks to Glenn Bordeaux for that question.
Thank you, Glenn.
We have from Haunted House, Patricia with 4 exclamation marks in red. So this should be important. Ask Mike about the ghost he used to communicate with as a child.
Oh, boy, they must have listened to another show. Okay. So it wasn't so much a communication. When I was younger, probably around 10 or 11. Well, let me just start this way. In my life, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. Some that still persist today. Not in a bad way, but it was part of my awakening. Actually, as a kid, I knew that something was very different than what I was being told, you know, because I was having these experiences. So when I was about 10 or 11, I used to see full body apparitions. And these full body apparitions, they would, I was seeing them 3 to 4 times a week for about 3 to 4 months. And then they stopped. And they were opaque, but they were very detailed. And if I had to put a stake in the ground and say, you know, the attire was probably back, you know, 1600s, 1700s. There were men, there were women. The women were holding the children's hands and so on. And it was like a pattern. It would play the same pattern every time. So it was like an imprint, an energy imprint from whatever happened. And
in that house or place you were?
Yep, in my house. I grew up on Long Island, and so I used to see them. And I was young, and it was a little scary. And I remember I would pull the covers over my head, you know, and I would think, okay, now they'll go away, and then when I pull the covers back down, they'll be gone. And I would pull the covers back down and they would still be there. And then they would just fade away. And it was classic. It was the classic description of how an apparition, by many who have seen them, how you would see them. And like I said, you know, that was something I'll never forget. Like I'm 58 now. And so that you're talking about, you know, 48 years ago, 47 years ago. Still in the front of my mind, you know, what it is I was seeing. And I even asked my brother, because we shared a bedroom back then, and we're kids. And finally I said to him, I said, did you ever see those people walking in between our bed? And he looked at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it was just me.
Well, that from Haunted House, that question, and he lives in Jersey. So
Okay.
He also says that the Canadian band you mentioned earlier, Klaatu, is awesome. So,
Yes, they are awesome.
Let's see. We've got from Mr. Drobot. Can we create holidays for when the sun starts to spiral out of each tropic every 6 months? This will help people understand its spiral path above our heads. Well, it sounds interesting, but yet, no. That's my answer.
Yeah, who's going to plan the holiday? You and I, that won't cut it.
A couple
Good idea,
people,
but it's not going to happen. Yeah.
A couple other people asking about the tuning, which we already have mentioned. Mr. Matty Moses asks, do you have a SoundCloud?
I do. Yep. SoundCloud. I think it's Labor of Love. I should know this.
You should.
I should, no, it is. I haven't, I have SoundCloud. I know that for sure, but I
Right.
believe it's, if you look up in SoundCloud, if you do a search on Labor of Love Music, that's, that's my website, and that's the name I go by for my music.
Another question here from Joey Sylvie. Do you believe in coincidences?
That's an interesting question. Do I believe in coincidences? Yeah. I mean, I guess I believe there are coincidences. I don't believe everything. If the question is geared toward, is everything a conspiracy? No, I don't believe everything is a conspiracy. I do believe that we have coincidences. But on the big things in life, the things that really matter, anything that's worth knowing, I believe that there's some level of conspiracy involved.
It's hidden. You have to
It's
work to get to it.
Yes, yes. So it's hidden. But I mean, coincidences, yeah. I mean, of course, we have coincidences. Oh my God, I'll get it out. Coincidences in our life all the time, you
Just
know?
say coinkadink.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't want to say everything is a conspiracy if that's what the question was geared toward.
All right. If there's another question that you'd like to ask Mike Williams, please put it in all caps in the chat. And I want to take a moment to say hello to Hi Fruity You and James Hicks Boson and Ginger Sugarbush. So All Is One now is saying that everything happens for a reason. Sometimes I don't know about that. But then again, after a thing happens, other things happen that wouldn't have happened had that original thing not happened.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not a grand plan. That's just the way life works. It's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell, and it's more complex than I think that people like to give it credit for. So remember before I mentioned cause and effect, right? So just based upon the law of cause and effect, every effect has a cause, every cause has an effect. You know, things are going to have a reason for happening. But the question becomes, should they have happened? You see? So a lot of things happen in the world because the controllers, they are manipulating the consciousness. Your thoughts create reality, and they know this. And this is why they spend all of their time trying to steer your thoughts so that you manifest their reality, not your reality, their reality. So, yes, there's a reason for things happening, but we have to take a step back and say, should those things have happened? I think that that's a question that we need to ask ourselves.
Thoughts are things. That's one of those
Yep.
sayings that came to me long before Flat Earth Awakening, long before 9/11. It was just something that I guess somebody told me. I forgot who. It's a very important way to look at life, that we're creating our own reality. So
Everything starts with a thought, Patricia. So,
mm-hmm.
you know, and I tell people this all the time. If you take a look at around your room, uh, the pictures on your wall, somebody had to think up the frames, the guitar, somebody had to think up a guitar, somebody had to think up a microphone, a jukebox, and so on. Everything begins with a thought, everything. And so what the controllers do is they manipulate and steer our thoughts. So when they are able to steer the collective consciousness in a certain direction, what will happen is collectively the reality will change. This is what I believe 9/11 was really all about. 9/11 was, in my view, about being able to capture a vast majority of the consciousness collectively and moving it in a certain direction, because everybody was focused on 9/11 across the earth, right? Worldwide. I won't say globe, worldwide. So that's how it works. So your thoughts are very powerful.
Now, alternative health is something that you focus on a bit. Have you ever done sun gazing? This question comes to me just because there was somebody talking about sun gazing. Save Our Future America said he was trying, or she was trying, to correct nearsightedness, and that there's so much disinformation about it that I think it's really hard to decipher. I've been called on the carpet for being a new ager, for saying that I've done a little bit of sun gazing, and it just seems to kind of make sense. But then again, you've got to be careful not to hurt your eyes and take it very gradually. You ever tried it?
I haven't tried it. It's something that I would like to try. And one of the reasons why I haven't tried it, it's not an excuse, is that I don't live near the coast. I think you need to be able to, be on a beach or
You
someplace
live
where
near Raleigh, North Carolina,
Raleigh.
right?
So I'm 2 hours from the coast. So what happens is, as the sun goes down, we've got everything in the way. So I think that from what I have read, that sun gazing works the best when you're able to be near the water, the ocean, and you can actually watch it as it's setting. So I have not tried it. I do know about it. I'm not an expert on it, but it's something that I would like to give a shot
Now, I
at some
know
point.
you're close with Sophia Smallstorm, and she does talk about grounding, as does DITRH. Is grounding something that you've brought into your life?
Yes, because I Sophia sent me one of her grounding
Yes.
one of her grounding tools, and yeah, Sophia's a very good friend and very smart. One of the I always tell her one of the smartest people I know.
She really is.
She's very very smart. She doesn't. She always like no. I'm like yes. But anyway, but yeah, she's her grounding tool is very effective, and if you use it on an ongoing basis, what'll happen is you'll feel yourself being very relaxed. You'll feel very grounded. A lot of the anxiousness and stress and that type of thing there. Um, yeah, you feel good. You feel good by being grounded. It's the same thing as if you go barefoot and you're walking on the beach or you're walking in the woods and so on. It's just basically having your body connected to the earth.
Plasma John Doe in our live chat asks, why do you think most people are unaware of past lives? And I'll rephrase that to say, do you think people have past lives? We discussed that before, but we were kind of unsure as to whether they come back to this plane or they go somewhere else. So, two-part question then. Are there past lives? And why do you think more people are unaware of their past lives, if there are past lives?
Well, the one of the reasons why a lot of people are not aware of them is because, especially the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, we'll pick on Christianity because I was a Christian. I was born and raised as a Roman Catholic. I actually spent time in an evangelical church at one point in my life, so I've been around the block. There is no reincarnation. You just live once and that's it, and you better do the right things, right? And otherwise, it's going to be problematic when you
You'll
pass.
burn in hell for all eternity.
Exactly, right? Or you go to purgatory. So that's a big piece of it. The religions just again, they're man-made and they are control mechanisms. And there's going to be people that are going to go crazy about this. And I know there's going to be Christians that are in the flat Earth movement right now are calling me a heretic. But just to let them know, I studied Christianity for over 3.5 years. Researched it like you wouldn't believe. In fact, I used to have discussions with pastors in fundamentalist churches about my research and my studies and so on. Now we would agree to disagree, but I felt like I was a formidable opponent, if you will. I don't like to use the word opponent, but person bringing the other side of the picture into play. So that's a big piece of it. So the religions now, and of course, in society, in the culture in general, especially in the West, it's just not talked about. I mean, you don't see it in the media. It's not on television, and then when you do see it on television, they try to make it it's entertainment. They really make it trivial, if you will, and try to make it look like a one-off and very odd. But I can tell you that, Patricia, I have been in practice for 7 years, and I do a lot of spiritual regression. I do a lot of past life regressions, and we do reincarnate. And how do I know this? Because when I do my sessions, it's very clear that there is consistency and there's a process when you cross over. And you can't have multitudes of clients coming in and reporting back virtually the same exact process over and over and over again as far as what happens when you die. The soul detaching from the body, crossing over, going into the spirit world, and so on. So this show is not about past lives, so I won't get into a lot of detail because I can talk forever about it. But there is reincarnation. We do come back. And as I mentioned before, I have a theory, and it is a theory, that if you continue to come back to the same dimension, realm, whatever you want to call this space that we're in right now on Earth, it's because you have not learned the lessons you needed to learn about this realm to the degree where you can progress or your soul would illuminate to the next level. And that's what your soul wants to do. Your soul, at the end of the day, wants to develop and wants to move to the next rung on the ladder to get closer to the creator. Now, some people will say to me, well, why doesn't the soul just do that? It's because when the soul comes in and inhabits this body, think of this body as a vehicle. And the soul, it's not easy for the soul to navigate and steer this vehicle. It's just not. I mean, it's a very dense place. We have all kinds of influences and variables that are thrown our way. As an example, the matrix and the whole control apparatus is to keep us from, or soul from being able to steer the ship properly.
Plus, what kind of body you were brought into living in, and where on the plane that you came into being, if this is all true. All of these are perhaps roadblocks to any sort of progression.
Yes, yes. And your body is the temple of your soul. So the other thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is if you're not going to take care of your body, then your body is not going to be the vehicle that it needs to be to get you from where you are to where you need to be from an experience perspective during this incarnation. And the example I use, the analogy I use, let's say somebody is an excellent driver. They're very good at driving a car. But they're told, look, we want you to go from North Carolina to San Francisco. We want you to drive cross country. And they give you a car that's broken down. They give you a car with flat tires or a car that's not tuned properly and so on. You can be the very, very best driver, the best in the world. But if you're going to inhabit and drive a vehicle that's not maintained well and it's broken down, you're going to have a very difficult time getting to your destination. And that's how people have to think in terms of their spiritual bodies and they connect to their physical bodies. In other words, this physical body is the car in that analogy. And you have to keep it healthy if you're going to be able to get to the, where you need to be from an experience perspective when you come into this life for your lessons.
Wonderful answer. And now we're out of time, but I bet we could have gone on that for quite some time. It would be interesting to talk to you again about that, about reincarnation and about that aspect of the way you think. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And I think everyone in the live chat's really enjoyed it as well.
No, likewise. It's been a pleasure coming on your show. I enjoy your show. I watch your shows, and I love your format. It's very relaxed, and it makes your guests feel very relaxed. So,
well, the same as yours. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate all who've been watching the show. For more information on Mike Williams, if you've not subscribed to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, that link is in the description box, and to his blog and to his album and other things. So please go and subscribe and like and comment and share and all of those fun things. So Mike, thanks again.
Thank you, Patricia.
I'm Patricia Steere. This concludes episode 160 of Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. And until we meet again, keep it flat.